Hi, I'm Robbie Strazynski. I'm 41 years old, married, father of three, living in Karnei Shomron. Made Aliyah to Israel in September 1998. Still here, 24 years later. Well, there was always some Zionism, but honestly, I was a senior in high school in 1998. And my parents, I applied to all the Ivy League colleges, and my backup was UCLA. And I got first deferred from Harvard, then rejected, and then then rejected from 3 or 4 other Ivy League universities, and then UCLA. My backup, from Los Angeles, that was like the local, just in case. They were, okay, we can accept you for spring semester. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, what the heck am I going to do from graduation in June 98 till spring 99? And at that point, my parents were like, Robbie, what do you think about Bar Ilan University? I'm like, huh? What do you mean, in Israel? They're like, yeah. I'm like, why? Why would you even ask me that? Oh, well, we're going to be moving to Israel. I'm like, oh, well, in that case, that's where I want to go. So I applied. Thankfully, they accepted me. I moved in September to begin, university studies. And my parents came and joined me in January 99. With my brothers as well. It was a gigantic culture shock. I was 16, turning 17 years old in November. I came in September, so I'd never really been an adult in the States yet. I had a very good life, and I still do, thank God. I lived in Beverly Hills. I had my own car, and all of a sudden, there's always that transition from high school to university anyway. But to do that in a foreign language, in a completely foreign culture, and also everyone is 21 years old, post-army, post-high school programs they've done. So I was very much a kid. I didn't officially make Aliyah till after I finished university. I was always on a student visa, so the Army didn't take me till then, or they didn't call me till then. I never ended up going. It was a gigantic change. I still say till today, I learned more Hebrew than academics. When I first started university, I started out as a biology major, thought I was going to be a doctor. That thought left my mind pretty quickly. Again, learned a lot more Hebrew than biology, biostatistics, chemistry, organic chemistry. And it was extremely difficult. I was an A+ student, perfect GPA, great SATs, everything. And I find myself, barely passing. And it was a tremendous humbling blow to my confidence, to everything. But, I didn't speak or know Hebrew. And, looking back on it, I say, good for you, Robbie. Somehow you still managed to pass, so at least that was something. After that first year that I was here, still absorbing how do I get around, and bus, I'd never taken a bus in my life. LA is a car city. And then finally when my parents came, that was helpful, 4.5 months after I arrived. So, okay, I've got that nucleus. I made a lot of friends here, but kind of created this bubble for myself, which in a way lasts till today, like a cultural bubble of people similar, Olim from other English-speaking countries, who I can relate to, and it's just always still very natural to only speak English. My Hebrew's fluent, but sounds like I still just got off the plane. Just to continue a little bit more, after that first year, took a look at myself. I was like, okay, I don't want to be this doctor. I'm not going to study bio anymore. I went to yeshiva, to Mevaseret Zion for a year, and learned. That's typical of what you do 1 year post high school. All my friends did it. I didn't. So I did it the year afterwards. And while I was there, my parents were like, okay, what are you going to do? So I was like, well, I know English. Let's see what Bar Ilan has as far as offering it in English. I went to the English department, and they said, well, we've got a literature track and we've got a linguistics track. And I'm like, well, literature I can end up teaching someday. Linguistics, what's that? I looked at the syllabus of the courses offered, and like half of them seemed like, wow, that's really cool, like the science of language. Ended up pursuing that, again, kind of like de facto furthering that bubble, because everything I studied was in English, but you make it whatever way you can in Israel, and 4 years later I had a bachelor's and master's degree from Bar Ilan in English linguistics. That's when I officially got called up. I had resisted becoming a citizen while I was in the midst of my university studies because, frankly, they would have taken me out, and that would be very difficult for me, just pausing and then continuing thereafter. I didn't know about, Atuda or other sort of programs. It was a completely foreign entity to me, the whole army. And quite frankly, I was also a little bit scared. I didn't grow up here. It's important as always you pray for the army, and it's a tremendous honor and privilege to serve the country. The whole cultural, everyone does it, that wasn't something I grew up with. It wasn't natural. So when I finished university and then I officially made Aliyah, became a citizen, I got that first, that Tzav Rishon. I was already married at the time. And I had, a bachelor's and a master's degree. So here I go thinking, okay, well, they're going to use me. They're going to put me in Dover Tzahal, be in the Army spokesperson unit. I've got a great English and I could, really serve them with something that I have. And the first question I get in the Bakum, the Basis Klita Miyun, when you first go in, so what grade are you in? And I'm like, I'm 23, I'm married, I've got 2 degrees, and it was just 10 hours of shnia. They didn't know what to do with me. After 10 hours of going through the whatever they do at the base, the testing and everything, they said, okay, you can do a full 3-year service, or you can get an exemption. And I'm like, and what am I gonna do? We don't know. So I was like, is there any way to know that I'd be in the spokesperson? We don't know. Can I do 1.5 years, 2 years, 6 months? Not relevant for your case. I'm like, look, I'm really sorry. It's very important to me to serve the country, but I can't, as a married man with basically no income and have to support my wife, say I'm going to go to the Army for the next 3 years at 23. So I said, I'm sorry, I'm going to take the exemption. They said, okay. And I did not serve in the Army, but one day, God willing, my kids will, and it will be a tremendous honor and privilege to say, hey, my kids served in the IDF. 3 weeks after I got here, we were still both 16 years old. I had finished high school, and she was still in 11th grade. I'm 2 months older than her. Unbeknownst to me, we had a mutual friend. So this friend, I thought, lived in LA. I knew her because I was a summer camp counselor, as was she, Hadassah, and she was a counselor in a girls' camp. I was in a boys' camp, but we had the same sort of base, so we met in the morning. We get to Israel, and I get a phone call, hey, Robbie, you want to come for Shabbos? I'm like, huh? She said, well, I actually live in Israel. My parents are here. I was just in LA for the summer. I'm like, wow, okay. Where do you live? She says, well, this little place called Neve Liza and Ginot Shomron, Karnei Shomron. I'm like, okay, tell me how to get there. So she tells me, and I had a couple other friends with me. Just the 3 of us came for Shabbat, and 16 years old, this cool experience. I had no family here yet, so just all my friends were in yeshiva the year after high school. So you just find places to go for Shabbat. So to get the invite, sure, great, this is cool. And what do you do? So dinner finishes, and we just go and walk around. As we're walking, I see this incredibly gorgeous girl. I'm like, I want to get to know her. We're the same age, but she's in 11th grade. That's how we first met, Miriam. And there's a whole long story there, but we were only 16. So we kind of we never called it dating, but we were together, off on, whatever, till about age 20. And we got married at 20, just 3.5 years later, and we're now married for 20.5 years. We were 20 when we got married, and quite frankly, we didn't feel any reason to rush into it. None of our friends had kids yet or anything like that, and we were still very young and, quite honestly, a little bit immature, and just not ready to have kids. So we waited about 5 years. We were married in July 2002. And in December 2007, we had Abby. She'll be 15 very soon. We've got 2 other kids. Ami, his bar mitzvah's coming up real soon. And Shira, she's 10.5. Miriam, like me, like you said, Anglo society and culture, but she made Aliyah to Israel with her family when she was just 3. She was born in Brooklyn, 4th of 6 kids. And they moved here to Karnei Shomron in 1985, just when it was starting, one of the first families to move here. But at the time, with all like 200 other families who made Aliyah from Chicago and Baltimore and New York and all these places, they spoke English in the streets. So culturally, and in the home also, so culturally she's American. And it was always like when I first heard her speak Hebrew, I was like, oh my God, you're a different person. Like, what is this? So she is both native Hebrew and English speaking, and I wouldn't call her culturally Israeli, but she can flip the switch in a second and no one would know the wiser. So quite honestly, I feel very lucky, fortunate, privileged to have that I don't know how to deal with that system. I didn't grow up with it academically. So kind of like relied, and to a degree still do rely on her, like, hey, you know how this works, right? As far as like the kids and signing them up from school and going to the conference, teacher conferences. I will say I went to an amazing school, Hillel Hebrew Academy in Eula in Los Angeles. But it was private, not at all a public school system like here in Israel. I don't know how that stuff works. And each year, as the kids get older and progress to new grades, I learn more. And thankfully, Miriam knows enough to guide me through it and have me tagging along. We were married in 2002 in July. At that time, I was basically finishing. I had another year left to my master's degree to finish it. And Miriam was still, it's law school, but it's the first degree here in Israel. So she was still studying, and it just made sense logistically to live in Givat Shmuel, which is, 10-minute walk to our classrooms on the university campus. Lots of our friends did. It was like at the time known as a stepping stone community. You live there during your university years, and then you move elsewhere. Also, the new Givat Shmuel was being built at that time, and people ended up settling in and moving there. We did not. So after about 2 years, when Miriam was basically finishing, her degree, we were saying, well, where should we go? Where it makes sense? We don't really know. We were, just 22. We didn't, have too many friends at all who were married yet or anything. She's like, my parents live in Neve Eliza and rent is really cheap. At the time, rent was still being paid in dollars, and I still remember it was $210 a month. It wasn't a fancy place by any means, but it was bigger than we had. We were paying $520 a month in Givat Shmuel, and still till today, I'm going to thank my dad for helping and supporting us, because that was a lot of money back then for students who didn't really have jobs that paid much, if at all. So 2 years later, we're like, okay, we can afford $210 a month, even though the shekel was almost 5 shekels to the dollar. And we just got very lucky. It was always under market rate. It was someone who lived in Yerushalayim, but he owned a place out here, a little apartment, for Zionistic reasons. Even though he already lived here, he wanted to own a place in the Shomron and always charged under market value. We lived in that apartment for 13 years. Give or take. 13 and a half years. Very, very thankful that, the rent rose, over time, but even when we left, it was 2,000 shekels a month. And this was 5 years ago, in 2017 when we left that apartment. So very grateful that was our one little break. We always paid very low rent. And over time, it proved to be a very prescient move to come here, because not only were we close to Miriam's parents, they're still living here, but as our friends slowly but surely got married, they're like, hey, this is a cool place to live. We'll move back home to, Shomron and start renting as well. And other families moved from other places. And we were among the first of our generation to move here, and, still here today, 18 and a half years later in Karnei Shomron. I'd say financial was the leading factor, but there were other factors. I mean, Zionistic, to me, it's enough living in Israel. Anywhere in Israel, it's all cool. There's obviously something extra Zionistic, so to speak, about, going one step further and living in the Shomron, and I am very proud to live in the Shomron and happy that I do. If we don't show a love for our land, other people are going to take it from us. Not take it back, they would take it away. And it was never theirs to begin with. Got to put that in there. So we got to show a love for our land. But beyond the financial, there was just those other considerations of Miriam's parents did live here, and it's just helpful to have the parents around, even though we didn't have kids yet. But it was just nice to know that we're a 5-minute walk from her parents. It was English speaking, which was very important to me, that cultural bubble I spoke about before. And also, quite frankly, it's not like we had any other ideas. Like, where would we move? Yerushalayim, that's a little expensive. And Givat, well, okay, but like, why would we? Like, there was nothing pulling us anywhere else. It kind of was like, process of elimination to a degree. And yeah, the financials, that it was cheaper. Okay, let's give Karnei Shomron a try. When my kid, just like anyone else, when your kids are out late at night, doesn't matter where you live in the world, you're like, okay, where are my kids? I need to know where my kids are. But it's never like, oh my God, I'm scared. Where are my kids? Because they're in the yeshuv, and that's okay. There is still, even though the yeshuv has grown to close to 10,000 people, there's still that kind of, familial feeling like if they're anywhere in the yeshuv and God forbid there should be any trouble, someone's going to take care of them. So I don't feel scared in the slightest as far as, the kids being in the yeshuv or anything like that. Very happy and proud that they live here. And I admit, and I see it every time we leave to go to a mall in Renana or Kfar Saba or one of the close cities, or Yerushalayim or Tel Aviv or Chutz La'aretz. Like oh wow, big. They live a very sheltered and protected life, especially the younger they were. They go to school. This is their life. And I think there's something very romantic and nice, a little bit naive, but we don't really have that much in the world anymore. And, I feel very grateful to have them protected in that way, that they live their little, go to school, come back home, be with their friends, walk around freely kind of life. I find it to be a tremendous blessing. They don't know how to take a bus other than the one to school, but that's okay. And, they're still at the ages, almost 15, almost 13 and 10, where we can drive them around. We both work, we're both independent, self-employed, Miriam and I. So we have the ability and luxury and good fortune to chauffeur them where they need to go. And, it's fine. Maybe as they get older, things will change. But I think it's been a really good decision that I do not regret as far as choosing Karnei Shomron as a place to bring up my kids. So, you've noticed this on camera, cardplayerlifestyle.com. So that is my website. I'm a self-employed poker journalist, is what I would call myself. It's something that started as a side hobby, nights and weekends kind of thing in 2009. I was still an employee. And a buddy of mine, Avi, we're walking around on Shabbat. He's like, why don't we start a poker blog? I'm like, how? What do you mean? What do we do? He says, well, I know website stuff and WordPress and I can set it up, and you know poker and you know how to write. So you just write stuff and maybe we'll make a little money, It's like, okay. 2.5 years later, he taught me a lot of stuff. And he's like, I want to move on. Do you want to continue this? And I was like, yeah, at this point, I know how to run the ship myself. And, a little bit more money started coming in. And I know who I'm writing for. So yeah, I bought him out. I think it was $1,500 was his share at the time. And continued nights and weekends just as a passion project. I love poker. I grew up in Los Angeles, going to Las Vegas 4 or 5 times a year when it was a much more kid-friendly, family-friendly kind of city. My dad taught me how to play when I was 8 years old around the kitchen table. And this is all after I got home, after the work was done. So what did I do with my time? So just started writing. Like when I followed the poker, what's going on in the poker world. So I was like, oh, let's write top 5 places to play poker, or let's see if I can get an interview with a famous poker player, or things like that. Fast forward again, from 2011 to 2017. During those 5 years, when you put forth the effort and you really spend every waking free moment you have doing something, it grows into something substantial. And I, talked to Miriam and I was like, it's not just, money to go out and have lunch once in a while. It's starting to become serious money on the side. If I could make this, on the side in my nights and weekends, obviously not Shabbat and not the holidays, maybe I could see if I do this full time, I would be able to make a living from it. So she's like, okay, we can give it a try. We had to talk to a financial advisor, like just kind of leap in. And she's like, well, who would you invest, what would you invest $10,000 in? Something out there or yourself? So I was like, well, myself. She's like, well, the way you put your financials to me, worst case scenario is you'll be in the whole $10,000 in the first year if things go catastrophically bad. And you could consider that in principle an investment in yourself. If you feel that that's worth taking, stop being an employee and go work for yourself, because hopefully it'll get better from there. So hearing it put in those terms, shout out to Rivka Leibowitz, Living Financially Smarter in Israel. Good for you. Thank you for that great conversation. Took the leap. I had a goal, and I can say it now because it's 5 years later. I wanted to make sure I made 100,000 shekels in the first year, and we cleared that by 20%. And I had a fire to my, I would say, a little fire under my butt because I did not want to go back to being an employee. And thank God every year has seen very substantial growth since then in the last 5.5 years. And being self-employed in the poker industry is very cool because 95% of the time I sit here at my home. I govern my own time, wake up when I want to, go to sleep when I want to. It's a good life. You work hard for that good life, but it is a tremendous blessing to not have to commute anymore. When I was an employee, I quite literally hitchhiked for 13 years to the train station, to the bus, or whatever it is, because public transportation out here in Karnei Shomron is not great. We had one car, and Miriam needed it to drive the kids around to what they needed to do. So it was not fun hitchhiking, and when are you going to get home? I don't know. It depends on people picking me up. So I don't have to do that anymore. And that's 95% of the time, work from home. And, this is before Zoom meetings and stuff, internet became a thing, whatever. I could work anywhere there's an internet connection. It's amazing. 5% of the time, this is the really, really cool stuff about doing it. I get invited. I get to go all around the world, Las Vegas, different places in Europe, other places in the States, the Bahamas, and cover poker tournaments in person. I get to see all these people with whom I'm connected on social media and writing about and getting other people to write about now as I've expanded. And I love it. Someone told me a long time ago, the big trick to life is find something you love to do and get someone to pay you to do it. So I'm self-employed, so I have to get a lot of people to advertise. The monetization model is just build the biggest billboard you can, right? And, have enough traffic passing by that the advertisements, you can charge more and more for it. So thankfully, the traffic has continued to grow. Money has continued to come in. I attribute it to Miriam's support, because without her saying go for it, I don't do it, because it's a big risk to leave your job, secure salary every month with benefits and stuff, and try to do something on your own, especially as a dual citizen, American-Israeli, with tax implications. It's not an easy road to navigate. So to Miriam, to hard work, and to Kadosh Baruch Hu, to God, not necessarily in that order. I don't know what the official correct order is, but those three components, will usually end up being, leading to success. If you have God's support, your spouse's support, and you work hard, usually good things will happen. My Rabbi Brander from Los Angeles till today, he always says, the best lessons are caught, not taught. So you can go through the school system and do all that sort of thing and, have a religious lifestyle and then be observant. But there's no necessary guarantee that your children will follow that path. So I try to, live a good example of, being a mensch and doing what I believe, the Torah type of lifestyle demands of you. Being a mensch above all, Yafet Talmud Torah in Derech Eretz, Derech Eretz is more important, Kadma Torah. But living that, and just I know what being observant and religious has done for me. It's given me ridiculous amounts of strength and the ability to get up from anything, even when I was at my lowest points. So having that faith in God and knowing that even, when you lose everything, you lose your mother, you lose your job, when Israel's very difficult, when you lose everything, still knowing when you're crashing all the way to the bottom that God is still with you and you can embrace that has given me tremendous strength. So I hope that that's something that my kids see and follow that, religious path. It would make me very happy. Same token, I hope they end up staying in Israel. I see no reason why they wouldn't, but you never know. And as much as I love flying abroad and traveling abroad, and as great as abroad is, this is where I believe we're meant to be and live. And I would love to, make sure they stay here. And I have my grandkids here. Like you said, they're young. They're still, teenagers, about to become teenagers. I guess they'll serve in the army and Shirut Leumi. I just hope that they end up mensch. I was a phenomenal student in, growing up in grade school and high school, and I really thought I'd be the valedictorian of my class. I wasn't. But one thing that I did earn, until today I'm very proud of it, I earned the Ben Torah Midot Award. And I show that to my kids. And I was like, valedictorians come and go, but to have something like this, that you have good midot and you're a Ben Torah, if that's an example that my kids can follow, I will be the proudest parent in the world.